I would say May is I would describe this as a combination of Carrie and Taxi Driver.
I wouldn't say Carrie. Like, it kind of shows how she's raised, but it doesn't, like, you think there's more point to it, but there's none. It just kind of, like, shows her mom being this obsessive lady, and then she's gone. She's disappeared. We have no idea what happens to her family. There seems like a lot of shots to just kind of throw in just for, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that intro wasn't thrown in. I think you needed to explain why this woman is such a shut-in and is so lonely and to herself.
Right. There's a bunch of blind kids, and they are in that movie to feed into this gory scene.
You describe that scene as gory.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. They're only there for an uncomfortable scene, which is kind of like fun to watch. If you're kind of twisted, and you watch like a really uncomfortable scene.
Sounds to me like you were just offended by what happened to the poor blind children.
No, I don't care about those kids. She was a jerk.
Well, anyway,
there's this one particularly blind girl, and she needs to learn some boundaries. She learned them.
The movie was episodic for a while. You'd have these little scenes with certain characters. Anna Farris is in it, and she's pretty good. Some other side characters played by character actors that are in like indie dramas doing their little thing, and it's kind of like an offbeat, quirky indie comedy about an offbeat, quirky woman. And if it was just that tone for the whole movie, it could have been like a fun, neat little movie. But then it goes to such a dark place. I thought it went from pretty decent to fantastic. This is one of my favorite horror movies. It's probably in my top 10. I guess I would agree. It's not so much Carrie, it's more Taxi Driver. I would say this is almost, if not better than Taxi Driver, which is pretty ridiculous for me to say. But I cared about her more than I cared about What's-His-Face in Taxi Driver. And I guess I don't know if that says more about me or the movies, but I don't know. Well, this is one of my favorite movies. It's not scary.
The underdog in this. She's awkward, like person you feel sorry for. And again, Taxi Driver is just like this angry dude who just has
angry racist dude. It's hard to feel sorry for him, but I felt sorry for him in certain scenes in the same way that I felt sorry for May. Taxi Driver has a scene where he goes on a first date with a woman who actually says yes, and he just doesn't know the proper thing to do and takes her to see a porno and thinks it's all right and weirds her out. And May kind of does a similar version of that, and it's kind of a similar arc where her life seems to be getting better than it ever has been before, but she can't handle that, and her weirdness is too much for everyone around her, and it's a journey that's compelling. I maybe it's not a great horror movie because it's not remotely scary, but it's a horrific movie, and it's a really good drama.
I mean, there is some things. I mean, the comparison to porn theater, sure, but I mean, self-harming and taking people to a place where they probably won't feel comfortable going to is a lot different.
I would argue that Taxi Driver guy self-harmed in different ways. Perhaps metaphorical self-harm. Emotionally, I think they were in similar places for similar reasons, and there's actually a scene in both cases where they're on a phone, talking to their love interest, asking to hang out again, and the other person's trying to be nice about it, and instead of taking the hint, the protagonist, May or Taxi Driver, doesn't take the hint because they're too desperate. And it's so uncomfortable to watch that the camera starts to pan away, and that happens in both movies. And I'm sure that the director of May was inspired by Taxi Driver, at least in that scene. In both cases, it was one of the strongest scenes in the movie.
I think that's the only real moment in the movie, like the real moment anyone can really relate to. Like, all the cartoony things she does, I mean, whatever.
Cartoony? You consider her a cartoony character?
She is a little cartoony. She's cartoonishly awkward.
I've met people almost as awkward as her.
Almost as awkward, but not to the same level where it's a little too much for me to believe that someone can actually think that's...
Well, it's a little too much for me in my life, and that's why I don't get too close to people like that. But they're out there. The scene you're talking about where she just assumes that he's into something and just goes for it. If that's all she's ever known and she's into it, why wouldn't she?
To me, it just didn't feel believable. The one part I felt that was believable was that part when she was in the shower.
On the phone.
And
right.
She was having a struggle I think a lot of people have had. They talk to people and they're so desperate that they're unwilling to grasp the situation, or they're unable to. And the other person just kind of
Right, and the way it was filmed, it took inspiration from Taxi Driver with that camera movement, but it elevated it. In the case of May, it's actually panning away because it can't take it anymore, and arriving to a new place to kind of represent metaphorically the place that she's in her head. It's both. It's like a 2-for-1 scene with that camera movement.
I don't think that's actually what's going on. I know that you like to see those kind of things in movies. You like to see the bigger...
Well, in Taxi Driver, the camera pans away from him on the phone and looks down an empty hallway for like a good minute of conversation, and that's literally all it's doing.
In Taxi Driver, I totally believe. But in May, the camera pans to her doll, which she's now hearing the glass cracked. Like, the doll is inside this glass case that's been cracked.
Yeah.
And you can see as she's talking, like, she herself...
It represents her mind, where she's at.
Well, it's also... It doesn't represent a mind. It's kind of like happening at the same time. You can see, like, you know, it's.
Well, it doesn't literally happen. It is in her head.
No, the glass is cracking. You can see the glass like getting.
Yeah, they show the case later. It's not cracked like that.
Sometimes films are just inconsistent. Sometimes people get cut in the left hand, and then it'll be in the right hand later. She's in the shower. She's having a difficult conversation, and the camera's panning towards her doll, which is in the glass case, and the glass case is cracking. And as she's like, you know, slowly like herself, like, you know, getting unhinged, the cracking
or perhaps she is cracking.
Yeah, sure, she may be cracking too. I mean, she definitely is. You know, as the cracking gets louder, she's getting more desperate. I don't think it means that, you know, the doll is her soul or whatever.
We can at least agree that bathroom scene was, like you said, you felt it. But I also like the ending a lot. I felt that. I think the ending is another example of a visual of what I interpret not actually happening, but in her head. I suppose it leaves it up to the viewer to decide, but I can very much take this movie to be not supernatural and feel that it all works.
Sure, she's changing how she perceives things to make herself feel more comfortable. A lot of people do that.
Right.
Escapism, you know. Going back to the other guys, the other characters. What's her name? Anna Farris?
Yeah.
Yeah, Anna Farris was one of my favorite characters. She's very much like her character.
She's underrated.
She's very much like my character in the scary movies, where she's bubbly and kind of like she speaks. I'm not really, like airy. Like,
yeah.
She's like.
Well, that's what she does well. House Bunny, she was like that too.
Yeah, and it's my favorite version of her.
Well, I would say this is my favorite role of hers because it is what she does best, that airy kind of personality, but in a relatively realistic setting.
Yeah,
you believe her in this in the way where we're never intended to believe her in Scary Movie or even House Bunny. Mm-hmm. And it worked, and I think that's why she's underrated.
Yeah, if they can do that character in a serious movie, like, that's
gold.
Yeah. The love interest, I liked him a lot too in the ways. There's some really fun scenes that he says.
I actually looked him up the first time I watched this movie because I liked him that much. I thought he really played it subtly, and in the like I liked him. I related to how he reacted to her. Like, even though May is so weird and awkward, you believe his interest in her initially. In a lesser movie, you would have been like, why is so even interested in so and so?
Yeah,
he was kind of funny. He was a kind of dickish at times, in a way that felt real and not like we're gonna paint him as a villain now.
Their relationship was very one-sided. He was the guy that was the one that was the cool guy, the one that, you know, had the better social cues to understand stuff, and she's always the one kind of like one to hang on his arm. And
ultimately that's not gonna work, right?
Yeah, it wasn't gonna work.
Jeremy Sisto, Anna Faris, and that dude with the spiked hair that just had to take his shirt off. He was cool. I mean, that's what I mean. A lot of like
the best parts of this movie is the really really campy, but like,
I wouldn't say campy.
The best parts of this movie are like the unexpected jokes. Like, there's this dog that's missing a leg, and there's a guy.
Don't tell the joke. Don't tell the dog joke. I thought you were gonna tell it.
I'm gonna tell the dog joke. Hold on. The best part of the movie is like this weird, like, out of nowhere jokes where like there's in the background they're happening or something like that, and they're subtle. Like, you could easily miss them. But there's this dog that's in like a veterinary clinic or whatever, and this guy is crying that his dog only has 3 legs, and he's like, "What's this dog gonna do? He only has 3 legs. He used to have 4. Now he has 3." The only reason I stuck with this movie is because earlier on there's these weird, subtle jokes from other characters, you know, in the background.
Right. I agree with you that was really good, and it made me connect with the characters in the world more. So when things became harsh, I was invested, and and felt it.
So helped me take the movie less seriously.
I disagree. It made me actually like take the movie more seriously. I laughed with these people, and I laughed with her, and tried to not laugh at her, and usually succeeded. She is one of my favorite characters in this kind of movie. She's one of my favorites of that type of arc.
The ending I didn't like. The
No.
ending was...
Huh.
I hate the ending. It
Wow.
was... I saw it coming from the beginning. This is one of those movies...
It's not a twist ending. It's
No,
a
yeah,
dramatic
this is one of those movies
endpoint.
where you see from the beginning where it's going to end. You can see the tension building.
You could
and
say the
moment it
same thing
breaks.
for Breaking Bad, but you still like the process.
But that doesn't counter my point.
It's okay
If
if certain aspects of characters are predictable. It just means you understand the characters. It's not a twist ending movie.
Yeah, it's not a twist ending movie, but I don't like my expectations be primed that much. I don't want to completely know what's going to happen within the first 15 minutes in the movie. It's like, I now know what's going to happen. I can tell when the breaking moments are happening and like what's going to move on from there. And it's like when she finally does something, it's less climactic, you know. It's
even when she does like go where she goes, that is an extended process. It's probably a good 20 minutes that she's doing this. It's not played as like, oh wow, big moment.
But the last 50 minutes was like no surprises, nothing that I care about anymore. I can see exactly what's going to happen.
It wasn't about plot at that point. It was about character and emotion, and I felt it.
But I mean,
I'm just telling you my perspective.
Yeah.
I felt it.
It's weird that she seems like she has a strong sense of clarity while she's doing the thing she's doing at the end.
That is
but then suddenly goes back into her escapism.
I thought that was interesting in a good way.
I mean,
it says something about social anxiety. She's like this because she doesn't know how she's supposed to be or how to be the way that people want her to be. But when she throws that away and goes, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, she's not like that anymore. I think that says a lot about her perspective and how and her potential and what she could have been or could be or might be if she fit in. Like, she wasn't that useless of a person. She was just not useful in this world.
But then it gets a little too silly.
At the end?
Yeah, it does.
It's a metaphor. It's not silly.
I don't like metaphor endings. I don't like so I hate when movies do this thing where it's like when they make you kind of make up the ending yourself, kind of like, what do you think happened there? Like, let's leave it up to the viewer to interpret this weird ending.
To be fair, we're literally talking about the final 3 seconds of the movie. Honestly, I would have liked the movie just as much if the 3 seconds didn't happen. I don't think the last 3 seconds were important either way. It just shows you that she's pretending again. I don't think it's like the spinning top in Inception. I don't think we were supposed to go, ooh.
If I could add a few more minutes to that movie, I'd really want to see the mom come in and discover, like, May in all the stuff she's done. Like, and her mom was, like, really controlling and, like, you know, like, one of those, like, obsessive moms.
So
that would have been the best ending for me, I think. In the movie, it was not about May at all. It was actually about the mom and the child she created.
That's a different movie. You want a different movie. You want a movie about a daughter and her mom. What you want is Carrie.
Carrie is a better movie.
Wow.
Carrie is a much better movie.
I give this movie 4 out of 4.
4 out of 4?
4 out of 4.
4 out of 4.
I think if anyone likes horror for any reason besides being scared, this movie is a must-see.
I don't really know if I want to call this horror. It's more suspense thriller. It's a thriller movie.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I'm not thrilled by it.
It's
more drama than thrilling.
What do you call it? Psycho something?
Psychological?
Psychological. It's a psychological movie.
That's just a keyword people use because they don't want to say they like horror. If they like a horror movie but they're too good for horror, they call it psychological.
Well, it's mostly...
Psychological thriller.
The horror doesn't happen until the last few minutes. I think it's
That's
mostly...
not true.
The horror doesn't happen until, like, the last 5 minutes.
That's not true.
How many minutes do you say?
I'm not calling it scary at all. Never tries to be scary. It's not about scares. The topics that are approached in terms of what happens is what's usually associated with horror, but it's a more personal take on it. So what do you think of it? What do you give it?
I think it's a good 2. Maybe...
2.
I think it's a 2 movie. I think it's a...
Okay, you consider it okay.
It depends on what you like, I guess. I mean, I don't think it's a well-scripted movie. I think it's a well-acted movie. But for the most part, the pacing, the music, the ending, all the weird scenes that kind of start off and, like, don't really lead anywhere, I want to know what happens to the kids.
It's just like life, man. That's just
The-
like life. Every day in your life, most of the things you deal with don't get brought up again and didn't matter.